The ship called Northwind was the pride of human fleets. It was not just another vessel traveling through space. It was strong, large, and built to face dangers of the unknown. People from many colonies had worked to create it, and its first journeys had already earned respect. Commanders spoke of it with honor, and children in distant stations dreamed of one day seeing it pass among the stars. On the day of its greatest test, the ship sailed near the edge of known space. Beyond that region stretched wild zones where few dared to go. The crew was calm at first. They trusted the power of Northwind. The captain stood tall on the bridge, watching the wide view of stars on the main screen. His officers followed his orders without fear. For them, storms of space were common. They had faced solar winds and fields of rocks before. But this storm was different. The first sign was a deep vibration under the floor. Lights flickered for only a second, then steadied again. The crew looked at one another, wondering if the ship had struck something unseen. Soon, the sensors gave warning. A storm of strange energy was forming ahead. It was not like clouds of gas or belts of dust. This storm bent space itself. Stars on the screen stretched and twisted as if they were melting into rivers of light. The captain ordered a change of path. The engines roared, trying to move the ship away. But the storm was growing too fast. It rose like a wall across the stars, closing every escape path. The crew felt their hearts pound. They had no choice but to face it. The storm was alive with lightning. Bolts of pure energy leapt across the void, striking each other in silence. Blue light turned into white fire, and then into colors that human eyes could barely understand. The shields of Northwind glowed bright as they held against the strikes. The sound of warning alarms filled the ship, and engineers shouted reports over the comm. Still, the captain stood calm. He told his crew to hold their posts. His voice gave courage to many, though fear still lived in their eyes. The storm swallowed them whole. Outside, the Northwind vanished from sight. Other ships that had been traveling far behind saw only the flash of the storm closing. They tried to send signals, but nothing reached inside. The storm cut every voice, every call, every attempt to pull the ship back. Inside the storm, the crew felt time itself bend. Some swore they saw two moons in places where no world existed. Others claimed they heard whispers in the static of the comms. A young officer looked out of the window and gasped, saying he saw a shadow of a city floating in the fire. None could explain it, yet all felt that they were being watched. The engines strained to push through. The captain ordered more power. The ship fought like a beast against chains, but the storm closed tighter. Lightning struck again and again, shaking the walls. Sparks flew in the engine room. Screens turned black for seconds, then lit again with strange symbols no one had ever programmed. Then, suddenly, there was silence. No alarms. No lightning. No sound. The ship drifted forward into a calm heart of the storm. All around them was an endless glow, soft and silver, with no stars. The crew whispered, wondering if they had reached another part of the galaxy or if they were trapped inside a world made only of light. The captain gave orders to scan the area, but before the results appeared, the storm closed once more. Light grew blinding, wrapping around the ship like a cocoon. The crew shielded their eyes. The ship trembled, as if every piece of metal was being stretched. A single word came from the comm, though no one knew who spoke it. The word was wait. Outside, the storm ended as quickly as it had begun. The space was calm again, the stars clear and steady. The trade ships that had watched from far away rushed forward to find any sign of Northwind. They searched for days, but the great ship was gone. Not even a broken piece of metal was left behind. News spread across human space. People asked where the ship had gone. Some believed it was destroyed, burned into dust inside the storm. Others believed the crew had crossed into another place, maybe a hidden part of the universe. Many wept for the families who would never see their loved ones again. But a few whispered that Northwind would return one day. They believed the storm had not taken it away forever, but only hidden it. The story began to grow, passed from one station to another, from one colony to the next. The ship that had vanished became more than a ship. It became a legend. And so, the tale of Northwind began, a tale that would not end for many decades. Years passed after the vanishing of Northwind. At first, the news was filled with sorrow. The ship had carried hundreds of men and women, all skilled and proud to serve. Families waited for news, but no answers came. Leaders gave speeches about bravery, calling the lost crew heroes who had gone beyond the edge of known space. Yet behind those words, people knew the truth. No one could explain what had happened inside that storm. The event was remembered everywhere. On colonies, children were taught about Northwind as an example of human courage. Pilots spoke of it in bars when they gathered after long voyages. Traders whispered its name when storms crossed their routes. Some feared even speaking of it, as if the storm might hear and come again. Soon the ship was no longer only a memory of loss. It became a legend. Stories spread, each one more strange than the last. Some said the crew had found a door to another world and chosen to stay there. Others claimed the storm was alive, and it had taken the humans as part of itself. A few even believed that Northwind had gone forward in time and would return one day, carrying knowledge of the future. Among explorers, the tale was stronger still. Many felt the ship had not been destroyed. Its hull had been built to survive far worse than storms. They believed it was somewhere out there, hidden in a place where no signal could reach. Young captains dreamed of being the first to find it. For them, it was a prize, a treasure greater than any map or crystal of power. Governments tried to keep people calm. Reports were written, long and heavy with data. They said the storm was a rare event, nothing more than a natural force. But few believed these words. The records of traders who had watched the storm from a distance told a different story. They spoke of lights bending in impossible ways and of the ship vanishing without even a trace of metal or heat left behind. For decades, the legend only grew. There were songs made about Northwind. Painters drew pictures of it sailing into seas of fire and lightning. Old pilots, drunk and tired, swore they had heard voices calling from inside storms they had passed. None of this gave proof, but none of it made the mystery fade either. In one station near the outer rim, an old man named Bren used to tell stories of the ship. He had been young when the storm took place, serving on a vessel that had seen the light from far away. Every night he told children how Northwind had not been lost, but had been chosen. His voice always ended with the same words, "One day it will return, and when it does, the truth will walk among us." The children listened wide-eyed, and even their parents stayed quiet, unwilling to break the spell. The legend was not just a tale of fear. It also gave people hope. For in the endless dark of space, humans always looked for signs that they were not alone. If the crew of Northwind had crossed into another place, maybe they had found something greater, something waiting for all mankind. Still, there was doubt. Many scientists warned against chasing after shadows. They said the ship was gone forever. They explained again and again that storms of such power could tear even the strongest hull apart. but their voices did not stop others from searching. Ships went missing on long hunts, some vanishing for years before returning empty-handed, their captains older and tired. Yet still, they searched. In time, Northwind became less a ship and more a mirror for human dreams. To some, it was a story of loss. To others, it was proof that humans could reach places even storms could not hide. And to a few, it was a warning not to go too far into the unknown. Generations passed. New fleets rose, and new colonies grew on distant worlds. Yet the name of Northwind was never forgotten. Its image was carved on walls, painted on ships, and spoken in songs. Parents still told children that somewhere out there, beyond the stars, a ship was waiting to come home. And then, one quiet night, long after most had given up hope, sensors on a lonely trade route caught a signal. At first, the operators thought it was a mistake, only a shadow of passing debris. But the shape grew clear. The readings showed a large vessel drifting with power still alive inside its heart. When they checked the name painted on its side, their breath caught. The letters were clear, untouched by time. The name was Northwind. The storm had taken it away, but now, decades later, the ship had returned. And with its return, the mystery of what had happened inside the storm was alive once more. The signal was faint at first, almost lost among the noise of drifting rocks and broken calm waves. The trade ship Silver Star had been passing through a forgotten route, carrying little more than supplies for outposts that most of the galaxy had stopped caring about. Its crew was tired, eager to finish their run, when the scanner officer shouted for the captain to look at the screen. A massive object floated ahead. The outline was strange, not like the rough edges of a broken asteroid. It was clean, straight, and strong, the shape of something built by human hands. The captain leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as the system cleared the image. It was a ship, large and proud, with engines as tall as towers. Across the side, written in bold letters, was a name the galaxy had not seen for decades. The word Northwind shone as if freshly painted. The crew of Silver Star sat in silence. Some whispered, others made signs of protection. The young officer who had spotted it spoke the name aloud, and his voice trembled. The captain ordered a slow approach, careful as if they were walking toward a sleeping giant. When they came closer, their sensors gave more detail. The hull was whole. No cracks, no burns, no marks of battle or decay. It looked as if it had been built yesterday, not vanished for decades. Lights glowed softly in its windows. Power still ran in its veins. But there were no life signs. Not a single heartbeat, not a single voice answered their hails. The captain of Silver Star knew this was too great for his crew to handle alone. He sent a signal across the net, calling for fleets and stations to come. The discovery spread fast, racing across the colonies like fire. By the time the second ship arrived, the story was already filling news screens everywhere. Northwind had returned. Explorers, soldiers, and scholars rushed to the site. Soon, a small fleet surrounded the drifting vessel, keeping their distance at first. Many feared traps, others feared curses. But curiosity was stronger than fear. People wanted answers. A boarding team was chosen, brave men and women trained for unknown dangers. Their shuttle drifted across the gap, landing with a quiet clang against the silent hull of Northwind. They cut open a door and stepped inside. The first thing they noticed was the air. It was clean, fresh, as if the ship had never been left alone. The systems hummed softly, keeping life support active. Lights glowed above them, bright but steady. Nothing seemed broken. They moved through the corridors slowly, their steps echoing in the silence. Tools lay on the floor, meals sat half-eaten on tables. Cups of water still rested beside empty chairs. It looked as if the crew had been living only moments before, then simply stood and walked away. The bridge was the same. Screens were on, showing calm stars. A chair was turned slightly, as if someone had just risen to answer a call. But no one was there. The boarding leader recorded everything. His voice was steady, but his team felt a deep unease. There were no bodies, no signs of struggle, not even clothes or belongings left in haste. It was as though hundreds of people had dissolved into the air. When the engineers checked the logs, they found something stranger still. The records ended suddenly, in the middle of normal reports. No warnings, no alarms. The last line of the captain's log was a sentence that stopped halfway. It read, "The storm is," and then nothing. Teams moved deeper into the ship. The engine rooms were alive with power, but readings were not normal. Energy flowed strangely, bending in ways the instruments could not explain. It was as if the ship's heart had been touched by something not human. Some crew members felt the walls. They swore they heard a hum beneath the metal, like a voice too soft to understand. Others thought they saw shadows moving at the edge of their vision, but when they turned, nothing was there. Outside, fleets watched with restless eyes. News ships sent out images across the stars. On every world, people stared at the sight of Northwind, unchanged after so many years. For some, it was a miracle. For others, a warning. Scholars argued about what it meant. Had the storm frozen the ship in time? Had the crew crossed into another world, leaving their vessel behind? Or had something taken them, keeping the ship as a message? The boarding team gathered samples, recorded everything, and prepared to leave. But as they turned to go, the lights across the ship flickered. The hum grew louder, just for a breath, then faded again. Every member of the team froze, hearts pounding. They stood in silence, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The ship was calm once more. When they returned to their shuttle, they carried not only data but also questions. Questions that no one could answer. The Northwind had returned, yes, but it had not brought back its people. The greatest mystery of human space had only grown deeper. And now, the world was watching, waiting to see what secrets the silent ship would reveal. The return of Northwind was not only a mystery, it was also a call to action. Leaders of many colonies agreed that the ship must be studied carefully. Too many questions were waiting for answers. A team of explorers, scientists, and soldiers was chosen to board it again, this time with full support. They carried scanners, recorders, and every tool they could bring, prepared to uncover what had happened decades ago. The team entered through the same door that the first group had cut. Once again, the air was clean and the lights were steady. The silence was heavy, pressing on them as they stepped inside. Every corridor looked too normal, too untouched, as if time itself had refused to move inside the ship. The leader of the group, a woman named Myra, gave quiet orders as they advanced. She told her team to mark every room and collect every detail. Each step was slow, measured, as if they were walking through a dream. They entered the dining hall first. Plates still rested on tables, with food half eaten and cups half filled. The meals looked fresh, though they had been left for decades. Scientists touched the food and whispered in confusion. It was not rotten, not dry, not aged. It was as if time had stopped the very moment the crew disappeared. Next they moved to the living quarters. Beds were made, some neatly, some messy, as if people had risen in a hurry. Clothes hung in lockers, books lay open, and games sat unfinished on tables. Everything spoke of life, yet no life remained. In the medical bay, tools were lined up in perfect order, shining as if polished that morning. A chair was pulled out, and a data pad sat waiting on its edge. The last entry on it showed normal health reports, nothing strange, nothing to explain why hundreds of men and women had left without a word. Myra and her team pressed deeper into the ship. They reached the bridge, where the captain had once commanded. Screens showed calm star fields, but one corner displayed broken lines of code. The engineers tried to read them, but the words made no sense. They were symbols unknown to any human system. Suddenly, one screen flickered. For only a moment, an image appeared, shapes like towers rising from waves of light. Then it vanished, replaced by the normal star map. The team looked at one another, unease growing in their hearts. Myra ordered a full search of the engine section. The crew moved carefully down the long corridors, their lights shining across walls that seemed to hum with hidden life. The engine chamber itself glowed softly, filled with energy that bent their scanners. Lines of light crawled across the walls, forming patterns no one understood. One scientist placed his hand close to the engine, and his device began to shake with static. He pulled back quickly, fear in his eyes. The readings showed energy levels impossible for human technology. Something had touched the heart of the ship, something far beyond their knowledge. In one corner of the chamber, a sealed door caught their attention. Unlike the rest of the ship, it was locked with codes no one recognized. The soldiers used cutters, forcing it open. Inside was a small hidden room. The walls were smooth and dark, and in the center stood a table covered with strange symbols glowing faintly blue. The scientist stepped forward, recording every detail. The symbols pulsed slowly, almost like a heartbeat. None of the team could read them, but all felt the same truth: they were not human. As they worked, a sound filled the room. It was not loud, more like a whisper carried on the air. The words were broken, soft, and yet human voices could be heard within it. They seemed to speak of the storm, of crossing, of something watching. The team froze, listening in silence until the sound faded away. Fear touched them all. They had proof now that the storm had not been a natural force. Something had reached inside the ship, leaving its mark in symbols and whispers. The crew of Northwind had not simply vanished, they had stepped into something greater, something waiting on the other side. Myra ordered the team to retreat. She knew they had gathered enough to prove the ship carried secrets not of their making. As they moved back toward the shuttle, the walls seemed to hum louder. Lights flickered once more, casting shadows that stretched long across the corridors. Some of the team turned quickly, thinking they saw movement, but nothing followed. When they returned to their own ship, their faces showed both wonder and fear. They had entered a vessel frozen in time, untouched by age, filled with strange energy and voices from beyond. They had found clues, but no answers. Outside, the fleets waited. News spread fast across the stars, telling of strange symbols and whispers found inside the ship. People argued again. Some called it a miracle, proof of greater paths for mankind. Others warned it was a trap, a danger too great to touch. The mystery of Northwind was no longer just a legend. It was now a puzzle laid bare before human eyes, daring them to solve it. The team returned again to Northwind. This time, they were prepared to stay longer. The strange symbols and whispers had shaken them, but they knew there were more secrets hidden in the silent ship. Myra led her group with firm steps, though inside her own heart she carried the same fear as the rest. The first target of their study was the hidden chamber. Engineers brought stronger scanners and machines to copy every detail of the glowing symbols. When the devices touched the strange table, the light grew brighter. The patterns shifted slowly, as if they were alive, moving from one shape to another. Some of the scientists gasped. The symbols seemed to respond to human presence. One young scientist named Aaron leaned closer. He whispered softly as if speaking to the table. To the shock of the others, the symbols changed shape again. They rearranged into lines that looked almost like human writing. Aaron stepped back quickly, his face pale. No one could explain it, but all agreed the symbols were not just carvings. They were some kind of language, waiting to be read. While half the team worked on the chamber, the others searched the ship for more clues. In the control room they uncovered recordings hidden deep inside the system, files that had not shown up before. The screens flickered, showing fragments of video. Faces of crew members appeared, their voices filled with fear. One officer said, "The storm is not just light, it is watching us." Another voice whispered, "We are not alone in here." Then the recording broke into static. The last image was of the captain standing at the bridge, his eyes staring at something bright off-screen. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but the video ended before a word was heard. Myra watched these fragments again and again. Each time her chest tightened. The crew had seen something inside the storm, something that had filled them with both awe and fear. She wondered if they had chosen to leave or if they had been taken. The engineers in the engine chamber reported more strange readings. The power core of Northwind still burned with energy, but it was not normal fuel. Streams of unknown particles ran in circles, bending the instruments. The patterns matched the symbols in the hidden room, almost as if the ship itself had been rewritten by another hand. Aaron, still shaken, began to test the symbol patterns further. He played tones, simple sounds, near the table. To everyone's surprise, the symbols pulsed brighter when certain notes were played. The table reacted not only to touch but to sound. It was like a machine built to speak through music and light. The scientists argued in whispers. Some believed it was a message, left behind for humans to find. Others warned it was a lure, a trap that would call them deeper into danger. As they debated, the whispers returned. The air in the chamber filled with soft broken voices, clearer than before. This time the words were stronger. "We crossed, we saw, they are watching." The team froze. No one moved. The voices were human, many overlapping, some male, some female, all faint as if coming from a great distance. Then the sound faded away, leaving only silence once more. Fear spread among the explorers. Some wanted to leave at once. They said the ship was cursed, marked by something too strange to fight. But Myra shook her head. She reminded them they had come to seek truth, not run from it. Her voice gave them strength, though she herself wondered if they were digging into something humanity was not ready for. Back on the supporting fleet, leaders and scholars listened to every report. The recordings of voices, the symbols that changed, the strange power in the engine, all of it stirred fierce debate. Some wanted to lock Northwind away forever, to hide it in a station where no one would touch it again. Others demanded the study continue, saying it was the key to reaching greater knowledge. Across the colonies, the people listened too. Stories spread that the crew of Northwind had stepped into another world beyond the storm. Some claimed they had become more than human, traveling where no one else could follow. Families of the lost crew wept as they heard the voices, hoping it meant their loved ones still lived somewhere. Myra and her team stayed aboard longer each day, piecing together fragments of the mystery. They knew one truth above all: the storm had not been natural. It had been shaped, built, or controlled by something powerful. The north wind had not just sailed into chaos. It had entered the hands of another force. And that force had left its mark for humans to find. The clues were clear now. The ship was not empty by accident. The crew had faced a choice, or perhaps a command. The whispers, the symbols, the strange power all pointed to the same answer. The storm had been a door, and the crew of Northwind had crossed through it. But where they had gone, and why they had not returned, remained the greatest question. And now, with the ship alive once more, that question pressed harder than ever on every heart. Myra and her team had spent weeks aboard Northwind. Each day revealed more mysteries, more evidence that the ship had touched something beyond human understanding. The energy in the core, the living symbols, the whispers of voices all pointed to a single truth: the storm had been alive, controlled by something intelligent. The revelation came slowly, like the rising sun over a quiet planet. At first, the team could not understand the strange patterns in the engine core. It pulsed with energy, bending space around it slightly, creating small waves that made the walls shimmer. Then Aaron, the young scientist, noticed that the patterns matched the glowing symbols in the hidden chamber. They were the same language, the same rhythm. Myra studied the recordings of the crew. The fragments now made sense in a new way. The officers had seen more than just light and lightning. They had seen something waiting inside the storm, a force that could move across space, watching, choosing. The words "they are watching" were not a warning of danger, it was a statement of truth. The team theorized carefully. The storm had not destroyed the crew. It had transported them. Perhaps it had opened a path to another realm, a hidden part of the universe beyond human reach. The crew of Northwind had crossed into that place, leaving only the ship behind as a signal, a marker of what humans could face. As Myra explained her thoughts to the team, the ship itself seemed to respond. The engine hum changed tone, vibrating softly under their feet. Lights along the corridors flickered in patterns, forming arrows and lines that guided them toward the bridge. It was as if Northwind wanted them to see something, to understand the truth. The bridge was quiet, peaceful, yet filled with a strange presence. Screens showed the familiar star fields, but behind them, shimmering shapes appeared, shapes that shifted and flowed like water made of light. Myra stepped forward, her hand shaking slightly as she reached for a console. The shapes moved closer, almost welcoming, almost human in form. Then, the final piece of evidence appeared. In the hidden chamber, the symbols rearranged themselves automatically. They formed a message in the language Aaron could now partially read: "We crossed to another place. We saw the beyond. Fear nothing, for one day you may follow." The team stared at the message, hearts pounding. The crew had survived. They had not vanished, not really. They had chosen to move into something greater, a dimension beyond the storm. And the ship had returned as a guide, a proof, a warning, and a challenge. Myra understood now what the whispers had meant. The crew had been watched, yes, but also guided. They had faced a decision, and they had chosen the unknown. Humanity now faced the same question: would they step through the storm if it opened again, or would they remain behind, safe but limited? Aaron touched the glowing table again, carefully tracing one of the symbols. The room pulsed gently, as if recognizing him. The energy in the ship was alive, intelligent. It had not harmed the crew. It had guided them. and it was now guiding these explorers. The team felt awe and fear at the same time. They were touching something far beyond human knowledge. The storm, the ship, the symbols, they were part of a greater force that humans had only begun to glimpse. It was not dangerous in the sense of wanting to destroy, but it was not human either. It was something older, something that measured patience and understanding in ways humans could not yet feel. Myra called a meeting in the bridge. She explained to her team what they had discovered. The storm was not an enemy, she said softly. It was a door. The crew of Northwind crossed it. They saw something beyond us, and they left the ship to show us the way. They did not vanish. They advanced. They became more than we can understand right now. The team looked at one another, trying to comprehend the truth. Their hearts were filled with both pride and fear. They had found proof that humans could reach beyond their known universe. They had proof that courage and curiosity could lead to unimaginable discoveries. But they also understood the danger. Stepping through the storm was not a simple act. It was a choice that required bravery, preparation, and trust in the unknown. The crew of Northwind had made that choice, and the ship had returned to show that it was possible but not easy. As the explorers prepared to leave Northwind for the night, the ship pulsed softly once more. Lights shimmered along the corridors, forming a quiet pattern, almost like a farewell. Myra felt it in her heart. The ship had shown them enough for now. The revelation was clear: humanity had touched something greater, and the story of Northwind was no longer only about mystery and loss. It was about courage, choice, and the chance to reach beyond the limits of human knowledge. The Northwind waited, silent yet alive, ready to guide those who were brave enough to follow. The fleets waited around Northwind, watching silently as the explorers returned from the hidden chambers and the bridge. News of the discoveries had spread like wildfire. Across the colonies, across stations and trading routes, people argued about what should be done. Some called it a miracle, proof that humans could reach beyond the universe. Others warned it was dangerous, that the ship and its storm could take anyone who entered and never return them. Myra gathered her team on the bridge for one last discussion. The symbols, the whispers, the energy, they had seen enough to understand the truth. The crew of Northwind had crossed into a hidden dimension. They had not vanished. They had advanced into a place humans had only dreamed of. The ship had returned to guide others, to show that courage and curiosity could open doors to the unknown. Aaron, still amazed by the living symbols, spoke first. We cannot ignore this. Humans have always reached for more. The crew of Northwind showed us it is possible. We have the chance to follow their path. Another scientist shook her head. We have no idea what is on the other side. The storm is not a normal force. It is alive, intelligent. We do not know if we can survive. One wrong step and we could vanish, just like the crew did, except we might never return. Myra listened carefully. Both voices held truth. She knew the decision was not hers alone. Humanity as a whole would soon face the choice. The ship, silent and glowing, seemed to wait, its lights pulsing like a heartbeat. It was patient, but it was aware. The path was open, but it demanded courage. Leaders of the nearby fleets communicated through channels, discussing whether to activate the storm again. Some wanted to lock the ship in a secure station, to study it safely, without risking lives. Others believed the knowledge and opportunity were too important to ignore. The debate stretched hours into days. Meanwhile, Myra's team continued to study the symbols, the energy, and the logs of the vanished crew. Every discovery made the decision more urgent. Finally, Myra addressed the fleet leaders. We have seen proof that the crew survived. They have gone to a place beyond the storm, and the ship has returned to guide us. We can stay safe and leave the mystery untouched, or we can be brave and follow them. This is the choice we must make. Some younger captains whispered among themselves. They were eager, daring, ready to step forward. Others were hesitant, their hands trembling over controls, worried about the unknown. The debate would continue, but the choice had already begun to divide humanity. At night, Myra walked alone to the observation deck of her ship. She stared at the glowing shape of Northwind against the blackness of space. Stars reflected on its hull, shimmering like tiny diamonds. The ship seemed almost alive, and Myra felt as if it were speaking to her silently. It wanted them to understand, but it would not force the decision. That choice belonged to humans alone. She remembered the logs of the old crew. Their voices, filled with fear and awe, now made sense. They had been witnesses to something greater. They had stepped into it willingly. The storm had been a doorway, a test, a challenge. The crew had crossed it, and in doing so, they became part of a story that humanity could now continue. Myra returned to the fleet and gave her final report. The storm is not death. It is an opportunity. The crew of Northwind showed us that humans can reach farther than ever before. The question is, who among us is ready to follow them? The fleets remained silent. Every captain, every officer, every observer weighed the choice. Some would stay, careful and cautious. Others would volunteer to enter the storm, to follow the path laid by the vanished crew. Each person understood that courage would be the measure of survival. And then, quietly, the first ship approached Northwind. Its engines glowed softly, matching the rhythm of the mysterious energy. Its captain had made the choice. Humans would follow, one ship at a time, testing the limits of their courage, curiosity, and determination. Inside Northwind, the cymbals pulsed brighter, the whispers grew softer, almost encouraging. The ship had returned to guide humanity, and now it was ready to lead the next group to the beyond. The storm was not an enemy, it was a challenge, and the bravest hearts of humankind would answer it. Myra watched as the first volunteers entered the ship. They moved with respect, awe, and steady determination. She felt pride and hope swelling inside her. Humanity had always reached for the stars, and now, they were about to reach beyond them, into a place that only the crew of Northwind had touched before. The legend had returned alive. The story of courage, curiosity, and discovery continued. The ship that had vanished into the storm decades ago had come back not only to be studied, but to inspire. It was a reminder that humans could face the unknown and grow beyond their limits. And as the first lights of the storm began to glow ahead, Myra whispered quietly to herself and to the ship, "We are ready." The Northwind waited patiently, alive and silent, ready to guide humanity into the unknown, where the lost crew had gone and where the next chapter of human courage was about to begin.